We are in a time of a great dying off of organizations and in a great birth of new kinds of organizations.
Procognita, Get Agile podcast.
What is Agile bigger role? Interview with Lyssa Adkins. Welcome to Get Agile podcast. We are on number 20 of the episode, and I have a special guest with me today, Lyssa Adkins. You are first of all co-founder of Agile Coaching Institute. You're known as the author of the Coaching Agile Teams, but also you're right now focusing on the Agile and leadership coaching, right?
That's right.
So we get a conversation 2017 in Dublin. It's almost 5 years ago. And one thing that resonates during this conversation with me was you said Agile has crossed the chasm. So we are in the already. It's not for just a few people selected, but it's for a lot of large amount of people. Now we are almost 5 years from that moment, so it seems that we're getting to the late majority. And let's start from here. How do you see that now? How do you see the landscape?
I really appreciated you sending me your really great post on your blog about, that I had said Agile has crossed the chasm, and that started you to go look at Geoffrey Moore's work and how you applied it then to what the marketplace will need from Agile coaches at different stages in that maturity model, adoption model. And I read it again yesterday, and I thought to myself, well, Geoffrey Moore's model might be out of date now. And I just want to have a little conversation with you about some thoughts I'm having about why that might be happening and to see where it takes us. Because I was just so inspired and taken by the fact that some small thing I said, which I probably, said very, lightly, sort of off the cuff, created this body of work. Then you took it somewhere, which was amazing. I mean, there could be no better thing to know that something that you say takes someone somewhere. And I think that's an experience that we get to have as Agilists, because we're introducing people to new things they haven't heard before. So, all right, you want to know why I think it might be out of date?
No, but I'm happy to hear that.
I'm a little nervous saying this. So the idea of these different stages of adoption and what people need in those stages of adoption presumes that we can go through a period of change, make the change, and then stabilize. And especially as we get further into the late majority and especially the laggards, so those groups that don't really care about how novel Agile is, they really just want to use it as a tool. Like, we can deliver that to them, certainly we can, but the whole purpose of Agile is to metabolize change, to not be afraid of change, and to use these very simple frameworks to make progress, even though we're in the midst of tremendous change. So the idea that we could stabilize Agile to deliver it to these audiences, I wonder if, certainly we can stabilize a version. Yes, we can stabilize a version of Agile and sell it to those people. Absolutely, I'm sure that's happening everywhere. And is that what Agile's for? So that's my main question that I'm sitting with.
And what I start thinking about is it's not much about the model itself, Geoffrey Moore model. Maybe it's more about what kind of agility different companies want, because everybody knows about agility, everybody talks about agility, everybody has their own definition of agility. And now the late majority probably are looking for something different than the early adopters. And in this case, you have two kinds of agility you have in mind.
Yeah, I think it's come, like, lately, if someone asks me, what is Agile? My answer to that question has changed over time. And lately my, 2-sentence answer to that question is simply that Agile is a really brilliant emergent response to an ever increasingly complex world. And agility helps us not be afraid of change, but be able to incorporate change and still make progress toward what we want, even though everything around us is changing, and some things, maybe all things around us, are even falling away. I mean, so that's a really scary place for humans to be.
And the question is, if we talk about the late majority, are they willing to be in this place, or are they looking for it's kind of, they say, like a standardized agile. So we standardize agile between teams. You've seen this probably before, right? And maybe, what you're saying is like something for the brave, and those brave most likely are not the late majority, or maybe I'm missing something on this idea.
I think you're right. The late majority aren't going to be the brave. They're not going to be the explorers. They're not going to be the ones willing to adopt something brand new. But even if we've standardized some version of Agile in a late majority organization, if we ourselves as practitioners start thinking about Agile as not like a thing to help them achieve X or Y only, and usually it's sort of like operational efficiency or some sort of delivery they couldn't do. And if it's not only that, but that the structures of Agile actually allow us to work with constant change. I mean, I think that's a reality that we're in, and that the late majority organizations would like to pretend we're not in. But I think we are in it. And so maybe it's up to us to yet create another reservoir of courage and act from that reservoir of courage with these clients that we have.
And by clients, you think about those late majority, you think about the whole audience, what you have in mind?
Well, I think about the whole audience. I mean, obviously the people who are more innovators are going to be willing to look at the reality of constant change a little faster maybe than the late majority will. But whether or not we want to look at it, the nature of change itself has changed. We used to go through these periods where there would be a lot of change, and then it would be sort of calm for a while, and we could stabilize. We could get good at something, and then there would be another change. And there was an article about a year ago in Harvard Business Review, and I can't remember the author's names, which I'm very sorry about, but please go look it up, everyone. Maybe you can put it in the show notes.
I mean, we can put this later in the notes.
Yeah, I'll give you the link later. So, but these authors say that there are 3 dimensions of change. On top of change already being volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. We say that all the time, right? That change is VUCA. But on top of that, these 3 dimensions are that it is pervasive, it's perpetual, and it's exponential. So pervasive, meaning that it's happening in multiple places in people's work and lives simultaneously. And perpetual, meaning that it's going to be one change after the other, and you don't really get these periods of stability like we had. And exponential, which we all know what exponential means, but we can't actually really feel exponential as human beings because we're so linear in our thinking. But exponential just meaning that not only is the number of changes increasing, but the pace at which change comes at us is increasing. And so whether or not we want to face it, I think change is simply what's on the menu.
So we either embrace the change, or someone else will do that for us on our market. This is what you're saying?
Yeah, and maybe what we embrace is our ability to metabolize change and use it for good. And that we have these very simple structures in Agile that allow us to do that. Because if we can't pin our hopes on a certain change happening the way we want, or that we can stabilize after a while, at least what we can create some security for ourselves in is the fact that we have these repeatable frameworks, these repeatable processes that allow us to bring that change in, include it, and still make progress. And then 2 weeks later, guess what? Things have changed. Bring it in, include it, still make progress. So I think that if everything else is falling away, and I think we are in a time when a lot of things are falling away, what can we count on? And maybe it's the structures of Agile.
Okay, so how do we help those companies, if they're saying, okay, we don't want to have, we want to have an Agile, but not much change. This is my understanding of the late majority. How do we help them to see that either you accept the change or, you will be out of the market sooner than later?
That's the interesting thing about the late majority is that they might be so solidified in their own belief system about how the world works that we may never get them to see it. However, changes are going to continue to rock their organization, both externally and internally. And so there will be chance after chance after chance to say, oh, here it is, another change. We can use Agile to help you metabolize this. We can use Agile to turn it into a force for good. Would you like that?
Yeah, my understanding is those companies were very successful in complicated world. So if you think about the Kinefin, if you look at the complicated where you can plan for the change, get the expert and execute the plan, and they move to complex world, and basically what they're trying to do is do more of what did work before and doesn't work anymore, right? And they're frustrated, but too afraid to do the revolution in their way of work.
Yeah, they're frustrated. And as you said at the beginning, my work now is more with leaders and leadership teams. And I would say that most of the time they are unaware of these dynamics consciously, but unconsciously they feel them, and they feel the pain of this constant change, and they feel the sensation of, oh my God, this used to work and it doesn't anymore. Now, that's going on unconsciously, I think, for most leaders. And so to bring that to their conscious mind is a lot of really brave work with them. And I gotta tell you, plenty of leaders I'm working with are like, no, we're fine, thanks. Okay, I suppose you are.
So how do you help them? If you already start talking about the leadership coaching, how do we help them see where the problems come from and what to do about this one? What you do?
Well, oftentimes they want me to lead with my expertise. These leaders want me to tell them why Agile is going to be so much better. And what I notice about that approach is that I can say, here's how Agile can help your organization metabolize change. Here's how it can help you capitalize on things that are happening, especially things that are unexpected in your competitive environment. And they will say things to me like, yes, I hear your words, but it's like you're talking a foreign language. That I don't really take it on board. And those are the more enlightened ones that say that. The other flavor that I get is, oh yeah, that makes total sense. But it actually hasn't penetrated them at all. And so these days, I'm not even coming in the front door to work with leadership teams from an Agile perspective. I'm coming in the front door to work with them from a leadership development perspective. And I say, and I happen to have all this Agile experience, but my job is to help your leadership team function better. And then we work with some tools that allow them to confront the places where they thought they were doing really well as leaders, and the reflection from their peers and their superiors and everywhere in the organization is like, oh, wow, I'm not doing as well as I thought. So that creates a little bit of a reflection and some information that they can use as they go about their daily questions and their daily activities, which it turns out have almost nothing to do with Agile.
Okay, so one thing that comes to me I'm listening to you talking about the working with leadership. It's basically the idea that when you're doing the change in the organization, you basically need to work on the leadership level because you need to have a support of those people, and at the same time you need to be on the gemba, so place where the products is being done, whatever it's coding, whatever else, marketing, the real work the customers see. And what I'm hearing from you start from the leadership. This is what I'm hearing, or it's just too much assumption in my thinking.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the best place to start is. Usually what happens is that I get invited into an organization and, stuff is already underway. So who knows whether it would have been better to start with leadership or with delivery teams, who knows. But they are, they're already underway. And so, oftentimes it's that there is some sort of transformation group, which tend to be, somewhat high-level leaders in the organization, and they are saying, "Please help us with our leaders." So that's often the doorway that I get brought in, and and these folks have had Agile in their environment for quite a while, typically.
Which is also a comment about the market we are on from the Agile perspective, because 10 years ago you were invited to companies that were starting Agile. Now we are mostly invited in companies we tried this Agile thing and it didn't work for us. There's something wrong with Agile in most cases. No, tell us what to do with this one, right? This is what I'm hearing from your experience as well.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of really good work that team level and program level Agile coaches can do in those organizations. There's a ton of good work. And there will be some sort of brick wall that those teams run into. And that's where I decided to try to work. It was like, what's creating that brick wall, or what's creating that bottleneck? And what I see is that it's the way leaders lead that creates an Agile disabling environment in their organization. And what I want to do is help them mature their own leadership and their own complexity of mind so that they can create the space for there to be an Agile enabling environment in their organization.
Yeah, my current assumption is super hard to change the organization if you can't work with the CEO of this organization. So if we are on this topic, how you do it? Because I'm still learning how to do it, so maybe you know better.
I think we're all learning how to do it. And I think that for myself and for other people, a piece of advice I would give is know whether or not you can actually be useful. I think that if you have the choice, and we all have the choice of where we put our energy, even if we don't have the choice of which organization to work for. So there is always some choice. But exercise as much choice as you have to do as much good as you can and let the rest go. We are in a time of a great dying off of organizations and in a great birth of new kinds of organizations. So there's a song that's rolling in my mind right now, and the lyric says, you don't have to change the whole damn thing. You just got to leave it a little better. Right? I think plenty of organizations will never truly use Agile well.
So this is also the approach for the work with the leadership. Is the goal is to make a better leaders, even if the organization doesn't change. This is what I'm hearing.
Well, I think the two are coupled. I don't think you can help make a leadership team function better and it not have some positive impact on the organization. At least that's my working theory. As a one human being, I only work with a handful of leadership teams a year. So it's not like I have some sort of, great wealth of source information and I can tell you anything for sure. And right now, honestly, I'm in the question myself of, where is the highest impact? Is it working with an entire leadership team? Or is it working with just the 2 or maybe 3 people on that team that are really ready to shift into a level of leadership that would create this flourishing environment for Agile? It's a question in my mind.
So the concept of deep and narrow over broad and shallow, or the other way around, right? This is what I'm hearing.
Maybe. maybe. We would have to talk about all the ways you mean those two phrases, but it sounds plausible.
Yeah, I mean the concept of focusing on one specific area on or small group of people rather than trying to do the broad impact, broad change with by working with many people. This is my definition for the specific context, right?
Yeah. Now that's just where I focus, because my particular talent and also my bias in the world is individual people and helping them shift, you know. So I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, and I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. So there are plenty of, I think there need to be many forces working simultaneously in an organization, and optimally the people working those forces are talking to each other.
Just a thought. One of my observation over the time working with different companies is that our goal as an Agile coach mostly is to help other leaders, and this is what I'm hearing also from you. So maybe, maybe not for all Agile coaches, but at least for some of them, that's sound like resonating.
Well, you're just reminding me that from what I see, leadership is the new bottleneck. I mean, it used to literally be a time that an organization's ability to deliver was the bottleneck. And then there was a time that the organization's ability to move product out to customers was the bottleneck. And so we've been through several bottlenecks and they've gotten liberated overall. Obviously, this is not true for every single organization, but if I look out across the whole set of organizations that I get to hear about, the bottlenecks moved. And now it's not necessarily that leaders need to be Agile or use Agile. It's that leaders need to mature their own mental complexity to handle the complexity of the situations they're truly in.
So what I'm hearing is we learn how to do continuous integration, continuous delivery. So we figure out how to do the small incremental change in software development. We learn how to define experiments, try those experiments, validate those experiments. So we learn somehow how to do the product development. And the thing we have no idea how to, or not enough ideas how to, is how do we create the leader that are ready for this kind of world.
Yeah, that's right.
Which sounds reasonable. So one thing you mentioned, and I really wanted to go back to this topic, is you said people are asking you for advice, so tell me, teach me or mentor me, and you're saying it's rather coaching. So
well, I'm talking about in particular when leaders want me to sort of prove it to them that Agile is useful or Agile is worth it, or what I really cannot prove or convince anyone at that kind of high level in an organization that Agile is worth it for them. I really can't. Because that whole question, if someone is asking me that question, that comes from a level of mental complexity that says, tell me the thing that we need to implement and stabilize on that's going to make everything better. And that is exactly the shift I'm trying to make in my own mind and in my clients' minds, that Agile and other modern ways of working are here to help us deal with constant change. So we're actually not going to stabilize.
And the moment you stabilize, your environment is going to change. So something that worked well
That's right.
2 years ago doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And so if that particular leader is not up for understanding or being willing to embrace what I see as a reality, who knows, maybe I'm the one deluded, right? But I see that as the reality. If they're not willing to do that, then I'm not going to be able to help them very much, right? And then they need to bring in one of the big 5 consultancies that will reassure them and tell them, if we do this, it's all going to be better, and spend a few $1 million. And then who knows? Maybe
on
that
the
leader,
PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, and then maybe that leader comes back to me 2 years from now and goes, okay, finally, I cannot hold back the pace of change anymore. I now actually do realize that I'm in over my head as a leader. Please help me.
Yeah, that's why we have a job safety for a long time period, because of those companies that will be coming back to us, and now they're trying those big 5 companies, right?
Yeah. And I guess there are some situations in which those approaches would actually match, and maybe there are some industries that are not experiencing as much pervasive, perpetual, and exponential change. Maybe that's a good match there.
Can be, although my assumption right now when I look at the outside the software development is more about engineering practices in hardware, more about engineering practices in construction. When you figure out how to do a house incrementally, you'd rather do it, right? Because the moment you end up your house, then you figure out what you did wrong. So it's just super expensive to do this incrementally.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, we're talking about building houses as if the way we're building houses is going to be the way we do it for the next 100 years. So we now have the ability to 3D print houses from dirt. We now have this capability as human beings. It exists. It's been proven. So the whole notion of trying to stabilize around a way of doing something that is already on the way out, I mean, that's exactly this mentality that I'm talking about. Like this belief that we're going to build. I'm sitting in a house made of plywood and sticks. The ability, the idea that we're going to build it like this forever is just not true.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. We're more into this dynamic of the changing market is not just about the software anymore. It's about the hardware. Yeah. It's about the construction. It's about everything.
It's about all of it. I think it's about us making a really radical shift as human beings. And it's the shift into working with what is actually going on in every given moment, rather than forcing what we want or pretending it's different. And so that is, if you think about the sort of the guiding light of agility, it's transparency, inspection, adaptation. And I think that transparency is such a radical act. It is such a radical act. And I think we can spend the next 20 years helping people be ready to be transparent with each other and to face the world as it is.
And since that, like last 2 years, they proved that the change will be here, and people who hoping for the new normal, like a stabilization. That's like a hope from the companies we're working with. Like, okay, everything has changing on the market, but it's gonna stabilize to sooner than later, and then we can go back to our way of working.
I hope for them that they can. I don't think it'll happen. We're now moving into an era where there's going to be one disruption after the next. And our disruptions are now at a planetary level. COVID is just a really good example, but it's not the only one. I've just become aware of the latest IPCC climate report, and it's devastating. It's really devastating to read what a consortium of scientists all around the world are in agreement about what is likely to happen to us in the next, few decades even. So, we're going to experience these gigantic forces, these planetary level forces that are going to affect every part of our lives, every part of our businesses. And I suppose that's why I'm beating the drum so hard of, hey, let's get good at metabolizing change.
A few months ago, I had a conversation with Robin Diamond about this one, and about that we in Agile community has some experience that we can bring to other communities, like outside the software development. And this is exactly construction, hardware, large different business that's completely not related with the software, or not used to having a change. So if we talk.
Yeah. So okay. Well, let me tell you about something that's exciting. So I feel daunted about that, set of conditions that's likely to happen. Sometimes I feel like, oh my gosh, what could we possibly do that would be useful? And then I notice people doing things that are useful. So one of the things that has just happened in the last week or so is that I've agreed to be the moderator of a panel about Agile's bigger role for planetary level challenges. And it's going to be in the keynote slot at Agile 2022, which is going to be in person this year in Nashville, Tennessee. So it'll be the last thing people hear before they go off to the conference party. And so the idea of it is to acquaint people with ways that people in our own community are already introducing ideas of agility into these large intersecting planetary challenges. And what I'm really hoping to spark is this worldwide conversation of, if Agile is no accident, let's just say it's no accident. Let's say it's here to help us do something right here, right now. What is that? And if we have this worldwide community of people who already love to learn and to share what we learn with each other, which we do, I think it's one of the most beautiful communities in the world. Our conversation is one example of it right now. If we already have that network, I think it's powerful. And I think we Agilists could be a powerful force to, maybe reduce the suffering of some of these things that are going to happen, maybe stop them altogether, or maybe just help people keep moving, keep having some sort of fulfilling and sustainable presence on the planet. So I'm excited that that's happening, and I'm excited about the panelists that I've got lined up. We actually meet in a few days, just in 2 days from now, to just talk about how we really want that panel to go and what we want to create. So I'm dreaming into the possibility that our already intact worldwide network of Agilists can be a significant force for good on our planet.
So Agile is more than the iterative software development, which also leads back to this crossing the chasm and Geoffrey Moore. Maybe these are just the new markers for the ideas we have created, 20 years ago.
Maybe all this stuff with software and corporations was just practice.
Sandbox for doing the really things. All right. So I'm going to close with one more question: is if we have those leaders who see the difference between what they want and what is happening on the market, what would be your advice? How they should start? It's like where they should go if they have a feeling that there's something is wrong happening right now, but they don't know what to do about this one.
I would tell those leaders to first pay attention to the places where you actually feel in over your head, even a little bit. The places where the way you used to work don't seem to work as well anymore. The places where you try something and your impact just falls flat. Because those are the specific goals that you will have to guide you forward in what could be a really profound change in your life and in your leadership and in your ability to shepherd an organization through the modern world. So just pay attention to pain, basically.
So see the difference between what you want and what you're getting from the organization, from the world. Okay. All right, so we're gonna close. So thank you very much for this conversation. That was really interesting direction we went to, we're gonna share some links under the recording. So please subscribe to our channel if you want to hear more stories. And thanks once again.
You are welcome. I enjoyed where the conversation went as well.
To learn more, visit procognita.com/getagile.